What does it take to be a professional music producer and be able to work as a producer, earning and paying your bills and being successful in this? This is a question that gets asked a lot by young up-and-coming producers or beat makers or people that are just starting off making music. And this is exactly why I wanted to do this video, so you can have 12 tips that will bring you to that end goal of being a professional music producer much quicker. And so you're aware, I haven't laid these out in any order of urgency or importance because I think they're all as important as each other. So please watch the whole video to get the full benefit. Okay, tip number 1 is make sacrifices. You look at anyone that has made a lot of success of themselves in whatever field they're doing, and they will tell you about the amount of sacrifices they have had to make. Be it a work sacrifice, or a financial sacrifice, or a personal sacrifice of not being able to go out as much, or not be able to go and see a movie as much, or spend as much time watching TV, or being on your Instagram, or whatever you might be doing. You're gonna have to be brutal and literally make a list and cut out everything you can. Give it 110%, really dedicate your life to it. And just to add to that, if you are going to make a sacrifice by losing your 9-to-5 income and jumping straight into production, just be aware that regardless of how much time you've already been doing tracks with people, and maybe you've got a few jobs in where people have maybe paid you for something, or you've got a little bit of success coming up in your life now, just be aware that when you do jump across into not having a financial income and expecting that from music production, that there is a transitional period, and look at that realistically before you commit. And then tip number 2, listen to other people's music. Listen to as much of it as you can. In an hour a day, I would say, is probably a good thing to do. And listen to different styles of music. Don't just listen to the music that you're recording or that you're making. Listen to different styles of music, completely different, completely out of your comfort zone if possible, and try and appreciate for what it's doing. Listen to the arrangement, listen to the vocals, listen to the chord changes, listen to what the bass is doing, what the production is doing. I can go on and on and on, but just listen to it properly and try and study it a little bit. And that will broaden your skills as a producer because you'll be influenced by it. And then tip number 3, and that is finishing your productions fully. So a lot of beat makers tend to make a nice little groove and then kind of put it around maybe a 24-bar loop, put a little verse in really quickly and jam around with it, done. Next one. And they just churn out a number and a number and a number of them, which is great. And that's a good exercise in itself. But in order for you to become a producer, you have to finish tracks. Get your little 8-bar idea or your 16-bar idea and then start arranging that. Then work out how the intro works and where does the song come in. If you don't have a song, find an a cappella. Any a cappella. Doesn't matter if it's a known a cappella or if it's one that you've just put on there yourself as a little guide. Try and go through the process. It's even better if you can record a vocal, or if you've got a friend maybe that can do a bit of rapping or can sing, bring them in, go through the process of doing the recording phase and the editing the vocals and everything else that you've got to do as a producer, because you don't have an engineer, you don't have a programmer, you got to do it all yourself. So do that phase, go through that, and then mix the track. Completely mix it, arrange it, like as if you're delivering it to, say, a really big record label. Do that, go through that stage, finish your tracks. And then tip number 4, and that is learn music theory. And I know that's going to take some time to be a master at that, but you can start off really from the basics and get an idea of what music theory is all about. There are books you can get, there are small courses that you can get online. I think Udemy do some of them as well. Get yourself understanding about progressions, chords, melodies. Get to understand as much as you can there. The more you know about that, the easier it's going to be able to create and also to understand how instruments work together, etc., etc. But definitely a big point, that one. And that brings me to tip number 5, and that is mixing and sound design. You can have the greatest ideas and you can have the greatest tracks, but if you can't mix them and if you can't make the sounds a certain way, or if you can't design certain sounds, then you can't really portray that great idea as well as you could do if you mixed it. So if you can get yourself into a mixing school or a mixing class, that would be really great, but they tend to be very expensive. But of course, you have got YouTube there and you can do a lot on YouTube. You can find out a lot of stuff. Just be careful that you don't get sucked into listening to too many people, because everybody has their own little way of doing it. You need to learn the fundamentals of mixing and understand what that's about and how you get a good mix going. And then there's sound design, and mixing is sound design, but there's also sound design from your plugin. So you can go into a bass plugin that you've got, or bass preset, and really twist it and get the best out of it. That's all sound design as well. So you can definitely get stuff like that on YouTube, and there's a lot of that on there as well. And now tip number 6, and that is work with other people. Find yourself producers, beat makers, musicians, writers, anybody in the industry that's further than you down the line. They're ahead of you, because even if you don't know exactly how they're doing what they're doing, you'll still learn a lot about the process of what they're doing. Or work with, say, for instance, a programmer that knows your DAW really well, so that by him just moving around and doing his things, just by being in the room and watching him, you pick up so much, and you can implement that into your workflow, and that makes you work much quicker. Another cool thing you can do is contact local studios and say to them that you would like to volunteer for weekend work, maybe do 3 or 4 hours where you could be an assistant. So you can just make teas, you can go down the road and get some food for people, or you can just help lift stuff around, but just so that you can be in that studio environment and you can maybe meet some really cool and interesting people. And meanwhile, you're learning all the time. And then tip number 7, and that's be original. It's good to understand a certain type of music really well, and to listen to people and to kind of try and emulate that, to try and understand how that works, and you'll learn a lot that way. But try and always keep your own identity. Don't follow what everyone else is doing and do exactly the same thing just because you think it's what everyone wants to hear. You can kind of take elements from that, but do it in your own way. Try and stay original, because people like people that are original, and originality shines through at the end of the day. And if you believe in what you're doing and do it well and keep going at what you're doing and you do it well, there will be more success for you if you don't follow. Tip number 8, seek constructive criticism. Playing your music to people is quite difficult, because people that are nearer to you are more likely to say, oh yeah, that sounds really great. They might not actually like it, or they might not actually feel, you know what, that's something that I would really listen to, or it doesn't really fit, or I don't like the song, or whatever they feel that they don't like about it, they're probably not going to tell you. So you're better off playing it to people that are really honest and say exactly what they think is wrong with it. Sometimes to try and find that person is quite difficult, but what you can do in this case is give the track to someone else and say to them, look, you play to some of your friends and see what they say, or go onto a forum and post it onto a forum and let people tell you on the forum what they think of it. Probably the people that are less connected to you are going to be more honest, or if you can get producers to listen to it, it's probably even better. And when you do get that feedback, you're going to have to work out what that feedback is telling you. If it's coming from someone that does no music at all, but just like listening to music, then the way they communicate with you will be different than if it's a producer and he's telling you the ins and outs. But it doesn't mean that the person that does know music, that their feedback is any less valuable, because from my experience, the person that doesn't work in the music industry but is just a listener, Joe Public, have usually been able to tell me what is good and what isn't. They might not be able to tell me why, but they can tell me what's good and what isn't, which for me is probably the most important thing. And if you really can't find anyone that's going to give you an honest answer and some really good feedback on your music, you can always contact me, and then I will have a listen for you. And that brings me to tip number 9. Equipment isn't everything. Just to have lots and lots and lots of equipment doesn't mean that you're going to create great music. Yes, it's nice to have a new gadget and have lots of new different sounds and new things, and that can create inspiration, and I understand that. But you don't need to have all that. Buy one thing and really learn it. You'll be surprised how much you can get out of one particular item that you buy, be it a plug-in, or be it a keyboard, or be it a drum machine, whatever you're going to go and buy. Fundamentally, making music is about having a great idea. There are lots of examples of records that have made it very, very big that actually don't sound that great, but they're really good, and the idea is good, and that's why it works. Tip number 10, upload your music to multiple platforms such as SoundCloud and Bandcamp, and really start growing your audience and get people to hear it. Even upload it to streaming platforms so that you get a bit of a following and you get a bit of momentum going with your stuff. Or if it's instrumental, why don't you upload it to a beat platform and try and maybe get some money out of them? You know, if they're sitting there not doing anything anyway, you might as well do that. There's many options out there, so just utilize them to get as much exposure on your music as possible. On to the penultimate point, number 11, and this is get paid work. When I started my music production career, it was quite slow to start with, and it's because I never really finished anything properly, and until I got paid work in, I didn't really realize what it was like to finish something. So when someone pays you, you realize, well, this better be really good, because if they pay me now, then they might pay me again, and I need money because I've got to survive. So that's what happened for me. As soon as they paid me, I started learning how to finish tracks, and all the other points that I made here before, they all started becoming a lot clearer to me because I had some responsibility. And the last thing you want to do is give someone a piece of crap, because they're never going to come back. So you've got to finish it properly. So if you're able to get paid work in, it will develop you much more, because you'll have more responsibilities for the music that you do, and you can't bail out. You can't say, oh, you know what, I can't be bothered with this one, I'm just going to leave it there. No, you have to finish it, which that in itself is something you have to deal with. The creative boundaries, where you get to a point and you don't know what to do, and like, how do I finish it off, and you know, what do I do here? Those are the things, those are the questions you need to be asking yourself, and getting paid work in is going to do that. And also it's going to pay for your rent, or for your next equipment, or whatever else you're going to do with your money. This brings me to the last tip, but definitely not the least, and that is, you got to be active on social media. Posting your own content on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever you're doing it on, is really great, because it allows people to see you, and it allows you to show your stuff off, and you never know what that's going to give you. But what is also very important is that you do the same back to people, that you go and find other producers and like-minded people of doing what you're doing and material that you like, and going to listen to it. Spend the time listening to it. Make that part of your 1 hour listening that you're supposed to be doing every single day, and just comment on it. Say, you know what, I really like what you guys are doing, this is great stuff, keep it up, or something genuine that you mean. And people are more likely to respond to that, rather than a spam message that says, yeah, great work, check out my new release at this link. That just doesn't work. And social media has been around long enough for people to know what is genuine and what is not. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to the end of this video. And I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've made it through from start to end, I hope I've been able to give you some really good idea and some really good tips on what you can do to make yourself improve quicker and become that professional music producer. I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and press the bell for future content. And if you have any questions, please message me. And finally, if you really do not have anyone to critique your music, please contact me, and I'll have a listen to it, and I'll give you some comments and feedback on what I think of your track. Thank you, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.